Hi, I'm Jaydeep Sai. I'm from CSCB section, and the topic which I have selected for this concept video is explain the features of HTTP protocol with reference to cookies and how the server remembers a client over the internet. HTTP. Let's discuss about HTTP. The HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Is a is an application level protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. This is the foundation for data communication for the World Wide Web, that is Internet. Since 1990, HTTP is a generic and stateless protocol which can be used for other purposes as well using extensions of its request methods, error codes, and headers. So we know that HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is an application level protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. So this HTTP is used for the information systems for distributed informations. So this is the foundation for data communication for World Wide Web. We know that World Wide Web, it is also called as Internet. So this Internet also uses the HTTP for its web applications. HTTP is generic and stateless protocol which can be used for other purposes as well. So not only in the web applications, it can also be used in other applications since it is generic and stateless. Using extensions for its request methods, error codes, and headers. So it can also be used for its extensions. The HTTP extensions can be used for other applications. So it is about HTTP. HTTP overview. The Hypertext Transfer Protocol is an application level protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. This is the foundation for data communication for World Wide Web, that is Internet. Since 1990, HTTP is a generic and stateless protocol which can be used for other purposes as well using extensions of its request methods, error codes, and headers. Basically, HTTP is a TCP or IP based communication protocol that is used to deliver data, HTML files, image files, query results, etc. on the World Wide Web. So, this HTTP is based communication protocol. So, HTTP is a communication based protocol that is used to deliver data such as HTML files, image files, query results, etc. on World Wide Web. So many of the people in make HTML designs, they do the web designs and web applications. So to push them on the World Wide Web, they require HTTP, which is a protocol which is communication based protocol. So these files and also images and query results are shared in World Wide Web by using hypertext transfer protocols. The default port is TCP/80, but other ports can be used as well. It provides a standardized way for computers to communicate with each other. HTTP specification specifies how clients' request data will be constructed and sent to the server, and how the servers respond to the requests. Basic features. There are three basic features that make HTTP a simple but powerful protocol. So there are many basic features of HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is very powerful and it is simple protocol. So there are three basic features that makes HTTP a simple but powerful protocol. The HTTP may be simple, but it is a very powerful protocol. The first basic feature is HTTP is connectionless. So due to it's not a connectionless, it is very powerful tool. The HTTP client, that is a browser, initiates an HTTP request, and after a request is made, the client waits for the response. The server processes the request and sends a response back after the client disconnects the connection. So client and server knows how about each other during current request and response only. Further, requests are made on new connections like client and server are next to new to the each other. So this is about the HTTPs, which is connectionless. That is the HTTP client. That is a browser initiates in HTTP request of, and after a request is made, the client waits for the response. The server processes the request and sends a response back, after which client disconnects the connection. So client and server knows about each other during the current request and response only. So the client and the server knows about each other during the connection request and response only. After that, the client cannot know about the server, so it will be very secured at the time. So further requests are made on new connections like client and server are new to each other. HTTP is media independent. This is another basic feature which makes HTTP a simple but a powerful web app protocol. So HTTP is a media independent. It means any type of data can be sent by HTTP as long as both the client and the server know how to handle the data content. HTTP is media independent, as it means any type of data can be sent by HTTP as long as both the client and server knows how to handle the data content. As long as the server and client knows how to operate the data, the files can be sent by HTTP protocols. It is required for the client as well as server to specify the content type using appropriate MIME type. So for sharing the data, the client and server must know how the content type, so that the content, how the content is to be known by the client and the server as well to share the content by using appropriate MIME type. The third basic feature of the HTTP Hypertext Transfer Protocol is HTTP is stateless. As mentioned above, HTTP is connectionless, and it is a direct result of HTTP being stateless protocol. The server and client are aware of each other only during a current request. The server and the client knows each and one another only at the time of the connection request only. After that, both of them forget about each other. So when the current request is completed, then the client doesn't recognize the server, and server cannot be recognized by the client. So they don't know, they forget about each other. Due to this nature of the protocol, neither the client nor the browser can retain information between different requests across the web pages. So due to the nature of this protocol, so as the HTTP is stateless, the client cannot know about the browser and cannot retrieve the information from the browser, and the browser also cannot retrieve any information of the client after the protocol is completed across the web pages. So it makes the HTTP stateless and media independent, which makes it secured and while browsing. As a result, the web pages or the index files and the data which is shared in the web browser cannot be accessed without any cyber activities. So basic architecture of the HTTP. The following diagram shows a very basic architecture of web application and depicts where HTTP sits. So here we can see the architecture of the HTTP web client. Here the database is there and server-side script is there, web server is there, web client is there. The client share makes the query, and the web server gives the permission for the server-side script, and the data is taken by server-side script by using database, and it is shared back to the web server, which is again shared to the client. So in this process, the HTTP works. The Hypertext Transfer Protocol is a request or response protocol based on the client-server based architecture where web browsers, robots, and search engines, etc., act like HTTP clients and the web server acts as a server. The HTTP protocol is a request response protocol based on the client-server based architecture where web browsers, robots, and search engines, etc., act like a HTTP clients. So the clients in the HTTP protocol are web browsers, robots, and search engines, whereas web server acts as a server. The clients are web browsers, robots, and search engines, whereas the server is web server. The client. The HTTP client sends a request to the server in the form of a request method, URL, and protocol version, followed by MIME-like message containing request modifiers, client information, and possible body content over a TCP or IP connection. So the client requests to the server in the form of a request method. The request method is given by the client to the server. The request method can be of any form such as request method URL protocol version. The requesting can be of any type, which may be of request method, or it may be a URI, or it may be a protocol version, which is followed by a MIME-like message containing request modifiers, client information, and possible body content over a TCP or IP connection. Server. We have seen about the client, now we are seeing going through server. The HTTP server responds with a status line, including the message, protocol version, and a success or error code, followed by MIME-like message containing server information, entity meta information, and possible entity body content. So now going through the server, the HTTP server responds with a status line, including the message, protocol version, and a success or error code, followed by a MIME-like message containing server information, entity message, meta information, and possible entity body content. Now let's look at about HTTP messages. HTTP is based on the client-server architecture model and a stateless request or response protocol that operates by exchanging messages across a reliable TCP or IP connection. An HTTP client is a program which is a web browser or any other client that establishes a connection to a server for the purpose of sending one or more HTTP request messages. So an HTTP client is a program, web browser, or any other client that establishes a connection to a server for the purpose of sending one or more HTTP request messages. An HTTP server is a program, generally a web server like Apache Web Server or Internet Information Services, which is ISS, etc., IIS, etc., that accepts connections in order to serve HTTP requests by sending HTTP response messages. This is about the HTTP messages. The HTTP is based on the client-server architecture model and the stateless request response protocol that operates by exchanging messages across a reliable TCP or IP connection. An HTTP client is a program, web browser, or any other client that establishes a connection to the server for the purpose of sending one or more HTTP request messages. An HTTP server is a program, generally a web server like Apache Web Server or Internet Information Service, which is ISS, IIS, etc., that accepts the connections in order to serve HTTP requests by sending HTTP response messages. Now coming to header files. HTTP header fields provide required information about the request or response. The HTTP header fields provide required information about the request or a response or about the object sent in the message body. There are 4 types of HTTP message headers. We have seen about the HTTP messages. Now looking about the header fields, there are 4 types of HTTP message headers. The first one is general header. The general header, these headers fields have general applicability for both request and response messages. So this general header have general applicability for both request and response messages. Next one is request header. These header fields have applicability on only for request messages. Response header. These header fields have applicability only for response messages. Entity header. These header fields define meta information about the entity body or if no body is present about the resource identified by the request. Request method. We have seen about the header request. Now we are seeing about the request method. There are many types of request methods. The request method indicates the method to perform on the resource identified by the general request URI. The first method is get. The get method is used to retrieve information from the given server using a given URI. The request get using get should only retrieve data and should have no other effect on the data. So this get method, which is a request method, which is used by the client side to the server side, is used for getting only the data. It is used for only retrieving the data without affecting any other on the data. So the get method is used to retrieve information from the given server using a given URI. Request using get should only retrieve data and should have no other effect on the data. Head. Same as get, but it transfers the status line and the header section only. It is also used like get to retrieve the data, but it transfers the status line and the header section only. It will transfer only status line header section only. Next request method is post. A post request is used to send data to the server. For example, customer information file upload, etc. using HTML forms. We used get method to retrieve the data from the client, from the server by the client. Generally, this get method is used by the client to retrieve the information or data from the server. And when compared to get, it is opposite, and the post method is used to send data to the server. Whereas get method is used to retrieve the data from the server, whereas post method is used to send the data to the server. For example, the customer information upload files. So we are inputting the customer information or we are uploading any files to the server, which is used by the HTML forms. So the HTML forms where we give the input by using HTML input tags. We are giving the input to the server by using the post request method. And the next method is put method. Put is a request method, replaces all the current representations of the target resource with the uploaded content. So this put method replaces all the current representations of the target resource with the uploaded contents. Next one is delete request method. Removes all the current representations of the target resource given by URI. This delete request method is used to delete or remove all the current representations of the target resource by using the URI. URI is used to remove or delete the information. So next request method is connect. Connect establishes a tunnel to the server identified by a given URI. The current method, connect method is used to establish a tunnel to server identified by a given URI. The next method is options, which is a request method used to describe the communication options for the target resource. This option method is describing the communication options for the target resource. And next one is trace request method. Trace is a request method, performs a message loop back test along with the path to the target resource. This trace method of the request message is used to perform a message loopback test along with the path to the target resource. HTTP responses. The response header fields allow the server to pass additional information about the responsive which cannot be placed in the status line. These header fields give information about the server and about further access to the resource identified by the request URI. The lists are accept ranges, age, tag, location. Next is discuss HTTP. We know that HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is an application level protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. This is the foundation for the data communication for the World Wide Web, that is Internet since 1990. HTTP is a generic and stateless protocol which can be used for other purposes as well using extensions of its request methods, error codes and headers. How the server remembers a client? This is a question where we get where the server remembers a client. If you are trying to input the password or the username, it automatically suggests our name. So by this, we think that server remembers a client. So let's discuss how the server remembers a client. Actually, the server doesn't remember client. The server avoids knowing anything at all about you. It ties up resources and doesn't scale well. The server doesn't remember you. It doesn't recognize you. The server avoid knowing anything at all about you. The server will not try to know about you and your information or data about you and doesn't scale well. Your web browser hosting the server's software locally looks on your own computer for cookie files and used what it finds: your user ID, login state, encrypted credentials, and so on. So the server will not recognize you because it doesn't hold any of your information. But your web browser, which is hosting the server software locally, looks on your own computer for cookie files. So your web browser will take the information from your information as the cookie files and use what it finds. It will generally try to take your user ID, login state, encrypted credentials, and so on. Most websites keep virtually everything they know about you in your own back pocket and cleverly pick it while you are distracted. The point of cookies is precisely so that web servers don't have to remember you and logged in. In other words, when you contact the server, it asks your browser if it has an appropriate cookie. If so, then you are logged in. If not, then you aren't logged. So the point of cookies is precisely so that web server doesn't have to remember you are logged in. The web server doesn't remember that you are logged in or not. In other words, when you contact the server, it asks your browser if it has any appropriate cookie. So generally, if we browse any website, then it will ask for the cookies. This is not asked by the server, but it is asked by your browser to get the information which is necessary, and it may be of any. It will ask you the permission to access the cookies in the form of files. If so, then you are logged in. If not, then you aren't. I thank the faculty and college for providing me this opportunity to speak on this topic on this concept video. Thank you.